it's natural to push into bigger doses because we live in this environment, and bodybuilding is terrible for this, where more is better, excess, everything's excessive, bigger, stronger, everything's about being excessive. When actually, when you get there, you actually realize that I'm making better progress, I feel better, I feel healthier if I'm capping off at 2.5 gram. And I do think that beyond those numbers, except for a few select people who have a genetic predisposition to be very tolerant of these drugs, there isn't really much cause to be going above 2.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast with Dave Crosland. I'm Scott McNally, and all of our programming is brought to you by evalbloodanalysis.com. You can get your labs done by Dave if you're in the UK, and if you're on cycle, you should definitely be getting your labs done. We're also brought to you by Strom Sports Nutrition. If you're in the UK and the US, you can get some great health stacks. Check them out. I am using Thrombomax right now. We're also brought to you by TrueNutrition.com. Use our code THINK over there to get 10% off on all your basic bodybuilding supplements like protein powder, creatine, and intra-workout. And we are brought to you by SupplementSource.ca for Canadians. If you're up in Canada, get some good deals. They have great deals that change week to week. Last but not least, thank you to everybody from Patreon. We've got some Patreon questions today. We just had like a fun little pre-show conversation about the difference between redheads and gingers. I don't know if we can recant that conversation and still remain monetized due to Dave's language, but maybe I'll put that in at the end of the show. I'll drop that in as like a bonus clip at the end of the show.
I can do a PC version if you want.
We got it. We already got it. It'll be a bonus segment for anybody who wants to stay tuned to the end.
Does anyone stay tuned to the end?
Yeah, we have two people.
Does anyone who's still not unalived stay to the very end?
We got a bunch of good feedback on the last show, Dave. We got a lot of questions for this one. You guys are welcome to leave questions. Just comment below on YouTube, plus comments, likes, all that stuff. It helps to boost our show up. And if you're new here, welcome. YouTube made some sort of crazy mistake. You went down a rabbit hole somewhere and you ran into us. We're glad to have you. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. It's the only way you're going to ever see us again. Dave, so here's the thing, man. We talked about like Anavar at an actual muscle building dose, and people lost their minds. They're like, 50 milligrams of Anavar, how long before your liver falls out? And then we talk about like TRT plus. What's the least amount you can use for a performance enhancement effect? And we got crap for that. We can't win, Dave. We just can't win.
No. Damned if you do and damned if you don't, young man. The problem is there will always be somebody with a differing opinion.
Yeah, and that's okay. I liked this comment from Samurai Steve. He says, 10 milligrams of Anavar or Winstrol, losing your credibility to limit liability. 20 milligrams of D-ball pre-workout, liars, dirty, filthy. That was his comment.
Hey, what gets me is they take it so out of context. If you actually stop picking your nose and scratching your ass while you're listening to the show and actually listen to the full context of the conversation, we've said time and time again, these are not performance-enhancing doses, but you might get a little bit in the gym.
Well, I call that performance enhancing. Yeah. I just wouldn't call it muscle building.
Okay, muscle building there. But my point is, we've said all this a million times. You want really effective dosing, you're going to be north of 30, 40 milligrams. Yeah. And most people are going to be nearer the 50, 60 mark. That's where most people, 40 to 60 is where most people will sit. But you can get something out of those really low doses, particularly if you are on point. But yeah, no, it's
can't win, Dave. We can't win. So I got a topic for us today. Let's take it back into the other direction. How to progressively plan your cycles for maximum gains. Starting from that first cycle, what would that look like? And then how do we continue to build it out from there? Because we see a lot of extremes. We see guys saying like, you only need 300 tests. And then you have guys saying, but I've heard that the pros are using 3 grams. They didn't just jump to 3 grams. So how, obviously we try to explain they've built cycles up over time. That's probably not a good idea for your first few years of bodybuilding to be running gear like that. It's something that's happened progressively. So I wanted to see if we could try to explain to people today, how does cycle building progressively increase? What would be the way to do that?
I completely misunderstood today's mission. I thought we were talking about something totally different.
I know what you thought too.
Yeah.
We can talk about that too.
No,
I think that's not a bad
now.
topic.
No, don't want to now. No, bollocks to you. Most people, I would say that a starter cycle is pretty much 99% of the time going to be test only.
Yeah.
Reasons being, it is a compound your body knows. It knows what to do with it. And it also is pretty much the foundation of all cycles. So you need to learn how you tolerate test and how you react to it before you can go forward. It's a little bit like learning to crawl before you walk. So it's going to be test. 300 to 500 is fairly standard. If you are more towards the robot side of discipline, then you'd probably get away with the 3. If you're more towards train Monday to Friday, go out with the boys for a few beers on the weekend end of discipline, then you're probably going to need a 5. And the reality of that is that extra dosing is compensatory for the fact that there are things in your training and diet that aren't on point. From there, some depends on, I suppose, which direction you're going in regards your physique. You know, are you training for strength? Are you training for mass? Are you trying to get leaner?
Let's assume the goal is muscle building. We're trying to get it as big as possible.
I would then consider 2 options. One would be the repeat of the initial cycle, or there or thereabouts, and maybe a slight increase.
Yeah.
One would be, so, let's go down the middle. So you did 400 milligram of test for your first cycle. I see no reason why your second cycle couldn't be 400, 500, or 600 milligrams of test. You know what happens, you know how you react to it, and you know you're going to need a little bit more estrogen management.
Yeah.
You may then think, okay, I don't really want to go much higher on a single compound, so let's bring a secondary compound in. And then what starts to factor in is your understanding of compounds. If you're not that switched up on what compounds do or how to manage them, you're probably better going as a second compound of DHT. Because you're not going to run into massive estrogen issues. You're not going to run into particularly prolactin issues or anything driven from that side of things. So, MAST, Primo, or potentially EQ. And then as your experience gains, you can start looking at compounds that are a little bit more complex. And Test and Deca, old school, works a treat. It's old school and still relied on because it works. But it does require understanding of the drugs. You're now not only dealing with estrogen conversion, you're now dealing with prolactin. So you've got 2 negative drugs or undesirable drugs that you now have to manage. And a lot of it is where your confidence is in understanding about how the drugs work within your body, and therefore your confidence in how to manage it. If you just want a drug combo that you can take, forget about, and you don't really want to be doing mid-cycle bloods, and you don't really want to be messing around with extra compounds in the way of management drugs, so anti-estrogens, anti-prolactins and stuff like that, then, you stick to a test of a DHT. You'll be fairly safe, and off you go. If you want to get into drugs that have a broader spectrum of effect but do require more technicality now to get them to work properly, then you can start looking at, I wouldn't say they're exotic, but you can start looking at your Decas and things like Men and Tren and compounds that do take more management, but with that greater risk and that greater management does come a greater reward.
Yeah, I would stay away from personally those more like the higher side effect profile compounds for as long as you can.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think it's something, depending on how far you're going, you may inevitably come up against.
Yeah.
And even then, I would probably say start with Deca, because it's probably the easiest of the three. But yeah, I mean, you could probably get away with Test Master or Test EQ or Test Master EQ, though that might be too much estrogen suppression. For, probably 3, 4, 5 years of cycling if you wanted. It all depends on what your linear track is. Are you 21-year-old, 22-year-old, really feel like you're destined to turn pro and want to give it your all? If you do, you're going to get into the harder drugs a little bit quicker. Versus, I'm 35-year-old, married with a couple of kids, and I just want to look good when I go on holiday. Then we're probably going to stick with Test and Mass for every bloody cycle we do, and maybe throw a bit of T-ball or Anavar in there at some point.
Yeah. I'll give you an example of somebody I'm working with that we were pushing it just a little bit more. He competed this year, and he competed on TRT with a little bit of an oral at the tail end, like the last few weeks. Then post-contest, he was like, hey, listen, let's run a cycle. I want to try to grow and then compete again. I ideally then have more size to be able to compete with. He hadn't run any gear. And he's, by the way, the guy's like later 40s. I think he's 47 maybe. One approach that I think would be a really decent approach to take with him would be like, okay, let's just run test only, right? You can run 500 test only, see what we get out of that. Or even 300 test only. He's only been on TRT. But here's my thought, Dave, is that he's probably not going to want to mess around with gear for the next decade, right? He's probably not going to be like pushing a bunch of gear now till he's 60. So he's probably only going to run a few cycles. My thought was, why don't we go to like 500 test, 400 EQ, like out the gate? He's already had previous experience with gear. He's already knows what he's doing with training. He's 100% on the diet. And so I would consider that to be a little less of a conservative move. Mm-hmm. But part of it in my mind was that, you know what, let's get what we can out of this, versus I think that if he were a lot younger, I would have said, hey, let's keep it lower, because that'll leave us a lot more room to increase, assuming he's going to be running gear for the next 15, 20 years off and on. In this case, he might be running a few cycles. And I think that it's still going to be a very manageable cycle. What do you think of that?
I see your point and argument, and I'm very much in the middle with it.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately it's down to the individual that's using it. Should be their decision.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, I see your point and I get your point, and I think it's a valid point. I also think that as an older gentleman, you are going to need slightly more to generate the growth because you don't have youth on your side.
Okay. Yeah, there's that.
But I would also suggest that not everybody, but I would like to think that most older gentlemen and older users are a little bit more sensible as well when it comes to how they manage the drugs and their other lifestyle choices around it. Not everyone.
Yeah.
Met a few that aren't. But, I'd like to think that for the most part, their partying days are over and they're only going to be sticking one chemical in their body rather than 2 or 3 different ones. Yeah. In the sense of a steroid or alcohol or recreational
drugs. Yeah.
So there's that aspect as well. And I've always been a great believer in if you're going to stick a poison in your body, which effectively all this stuff is, then pick one. You know what I mean? Don't start throwing 2 or 3 at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So eventually we get those doses do build. We see guys then that are 500 tests, then 700 tests, then 1,000 tests down the road.
I went to 4.5 gram. But I didn't go to 4.5 gram because I felt I needed that to grow. I went to 4.5 gram because I thought I needed it to grow in the time scale I was looking at.
Okay.
And that was a big deciding factor. Plus,
it wasn't a great move either, was it?
Yes.
I mean, would you suggest that to others?
No, but that's my that comes down to my point of personal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, I think even time again, I probably wouldn't shy on the dosage.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I would.
Do you think though it was that beneficial? Like to say, like, you know, like, oh yeah, had I taken 3 gram, you know, I wouldn't have been able to do what I've done, you know?
I don't think I would have sustained the progress.
Okay.
So I grew for 7 months.
Yeah.
And I kept growing. I mean, I was still growing at the back end of it, though there were negatives starting to creep in. I had about 4 or 5 weeks of negatives at the end that just gradually built. And they weren't major negatives. They were just niggles and stupid shit. You know what it's like when you've been on too long.
Well, there was a big major negative, too.
Oh, that was the second one. That was the second
okay.
push.
Okay. I just don't know, because maybe we have people who are tuning in and they're like, oh, he ran 4 grams. This is not a problem for him.
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that at all. No,
little joint issues at the end of that cycle.
No. So I then repeated that cycle, different drugs, but same total dosage-ish. And that resulted in kidney failure and heart failure and all sorts of health problems. So, you know, I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that there's two sort of sides to this. Tolerance of the drug while I was using them and immediate problems while using them weren't that bad. And progress was very good. Long-term health impacts were a lot more serious.
Which is kind of scary, man, because I think a lot of times we judge, well, how bad am I feeling? That's really, you know what I mean? We're not thinking like, well, how is this cycle going to affect me in 5 years or 6 months?
No, and I think it's part of the conversation that you need to have with yourself as you start to elevate the dose is you're not going to come out of this unscathed in one way or another. It may not be major, but you're not going to come out of this unscathed in one way or the other. And it was very interesting. So I was at a conference on Friday on gear.
Oh, really?
And one of the new areas of research, which to me is old, to be fair, but it's one that academically they're starting to take more interested in, is dependency.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And they're now accepting that dependency is a big issue for a lot of people, and obviously that then starts to lead to choice and decision making that may not be fully neutral in, I can't think of the right word today for some reason, in the fact that it's going to be influenced by the fact that people are scared to come off or scared to lower the dose. And it's for a whole host of factors, you know what I mean? Loss of size, loss of identity, loss of feeling a certain way. There's lots of drivers behind it. But yeah, so dependency is becoming a bigger thing. So the long-term impacts from using gear are not just physical, there are also psychological and things like dependency that is developing in people. And probably a lot more common than people want to accept. It's very difficult to say or admit you're dependent on a substance.
Yeah.
It's not an easy conversation to have with yourself. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to all of a sudden go, oh, well, I can't use gear anymore. It just means you have to be conscious of that bias when it comes to making decisions about what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, and then with that, too, I think that's where sometimes the needless increase of dose occurs, because then, you know, you start out and let's say that you aren't on TRT, but somewhere around down the road as you're progressing in your cycles, now you are on TRT. And you get further down the road and your cycles are getting higher, and then you decide that you're not just going to do TRT, you're going to cruise, and you're doing 300 milligrams of test, for your cruise. Now, if you're doing 300 milligrams of test for your cruise, that 450, 500 milligram test cycle doesn't seem quite that great anymore. You know what I mean? Now we have to take that up to 750 plus something else. And that, I think, it's a slippery slope. I hate to use that term, but it does kind of develop, over time.
I think, if you want to create little rules of thumb, little sort of guidelines, I would say that if you do a cycle and you grow off it, then there is no reason why you can't repeat that cycle. And if you grow off it again, there's no reason why you can't repeat the cycle again. And you could potentially do that to the point where you stop getting progress off that cycle, and then that would be the point when you'd look at a dose increase or a compound change. And you may even, let's say your total dosage is 600 milligrams and it's test only, and you get 3 cycles out of that and you progress well, but the third cycle's a bit wishy-washy. So you might then go, right, well, my next cycle, instead of going 700 or 800, I'll do 300 mega test and 300 mega deca. So the same total milligram, just different compounds playing now, and you might find you grow again. So
I like the sounds of that.
You don't always have to drive the dose up. And it is a risk-reward scenario, and that's going to be very individual for each person. But one major factor I would say about exposure to anabolics and your choices around anabolics, this isn't a free ride. There is a cost. Now, those costs can be managed, but not always, and you have to be willing to pay the potential price that these drugs can cost you. And if you're not, think long and hard about what you're doing with your drugs and cycles, because, there's people like contact me on a regular basis that are paying prices they never realize were going to be there and are very woe is me now. And it's like, well, what did you expect? It was only last week a 212 competitor pro passed away, unfortunately. I'm not saying it was steroid related, but you can't help but think that maybe it played a factor in it. And I know tons of amateurs that, particularly cardiovascular issues, when they've hit in the 40s and 50s. And there's no denying that, the incident of cardiovascular episode within steroid users is significantly higher than the general populace. Yeah. So, there are risks there, and they will bite you on the arse. So you've always got to factor that in when you make the decisions. And it's not the easiest thing to do when you're 21 and you want to be massive, and you're not thinking about what's happening when you're 40 and 50.
One last thing that I'll add in too, just to kind of piggyback off what you're saying, Dave, with progressing those doses or staying the same really, and getting the most out of this cycle, and then repeating that cycle, getting the most out of it again. If you stop progressing, it might not just be gear related. Remember that as you grow, your nutritional needs will change. Your body's always kind of looking for homeostasis. And I think that we a lot of times on this show, it's called drugs and stuff, right? So we focus on the drugs, but you and I both, are well aware, and we, maybe don't talk about it enough on this show, but there are the other sides to it, the nutrition and the training. Like, your body's always, like, if you do the same exercises, the same sequence, you can take that so far, but there does come a point that needs to change too. And that may be your biggest limiting factor. You might be able to up the dose and then eke out some more progress on a program for training that used to be great and now is inferior, but you can only do that so many times. So I would suggest that as much as you invest into learning about gear to be safe and understand how these compounds work, don't sleep on your training. Don't sleep on the nutrition, because those things are equally as important. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, there's something I've noticed, which has led me to come to a bit of a conclusion. I've been fortunate to talk to a lot of pros over the years about their drug use and their patterns of drug use. And it seems to be fairly common that they will start getting into the 3-4 gram numbers for a short period of time. And they nearly all exclusively come back down till 2 to 2.5. And that seems to be where they end up settling. And it does seem to be very much that it's natural to push into bigger doses, because we live in this environment, and bodybuilding is terrible for this, where more is better, everything's excessive, bigger, stronger, everything's about being excessive. When actually, when you get there, you actually realize that I'm making better progress, I feel better, I feel healthier if I'm capping off at 2.5 gram. And I do think that beyond those numbers, except for a few select people who have a genetic predisposition to be very tolerant of these drugs, there isn't really much cause to be going above 2.
Fair enough. I think that's a great point.
Studies show creatine doesn't just fuel your muscles, it fuels your brain. Research links creatine to improved memory, focus, and mental clarity, especially while under stress. It helps reduce mental fatigue, supports learning, and may even protect long-term brain health. I order my creatine from True Nutrition. Use code THINK at checkout to get 10% off and support this podcast. Power your body and your mind with True Nutrition Creatine. By the way, this is my actual morning routine, mixing 15 grams of creatine into my oats. No flavor, no texture. And hey, since I got married, we store it in this fancy jar so it doesn't look like my wife lives with a bro. But hey, if you're single, just leave it in the bag on the counter. It's totally fine.
All right, listen, let's move forward. Let's jump into our listener questions. We've got a bunch of them. They left us tons of questions, Dave. And if you guys want to take part in the next show, then definitely comment. I had a couple on Patreon that I wanted to make sure we got to. All right, how about this one? He says, on a cruise for around 6 weeks, and I want to cut before my next push. Would like to get my markers in check for pre-blast labs. How much does Clen affect my blood work?
Not hugely. A wasp.
What? Oh, what happened? You messed up your camera.
What do you mean?
You're frozen now. Oh, you're back, kind of.
No,
all right, I got you.
I'm fine. Yeah, wasp. I was getting buzzed by a wasp.
Oh God.
Clen.
I don't think Clen's going to have a major effect. It's not going to affect your cholesterol.
No, I would have said the only really way you're going to see Clen impact is resting heart rate, BP, potentially some impacts there, but I wouldn't suspect anything on bloods, no.
Yeah. Question for the podcast. Are you still natty if you use a GLP med? Seeing a lot of influencers claiming natural despite their GLP use.
The boundary of where does someone move? I mean, if you want to be truly literal about natural, then you would take nothing that wasn't grown in the ground or raised on the land.
Yeah, who's defining what natty is? Is it an organization that you compete in? Is it, you know what I mean?
I think generally
it's the law.
The natty rule is very much based around what is the WADA banned list.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But you know,
which
there
is pretty arbitrary in itself.
Fuck me, they tried putting caffeine on it at one point. But then some people argue that you're natty as long as you're not using natural anabolics. Some people, and I suppose it's down to a personal definition, but I would have personally said that natural is someone who uses no chemical image or performance enhancement compounds.
Yeah, I could go with that.
So
I mean, here's what I'd say too, Dave, is that like if you're claiming that like there's a line in there, like, you know, would I consider myself, I'm not natty, you know what I mean, but like unenhanced while using Retta for fat loss in my own life, yeah, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not really on anything, but I'm using Retta. You know, I wouldn't consider that to be like performance enhancing, but if we had two people that were competing against each other and one of them was using Retta and one of them was not, and this category was supposed to be natural, or this person says, hey guys, you know, buy my new supplement and it's going to help you to get as lean as I am, but they're using Retta, you know, then yeah, that's kind of dishonest, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there is growing pressure for this, but whether it'll ever actually happen or not, there's already been a move that companies that advertise products and use athletes have to state somewhere on the advert that this person didn't achieve this physique using this product.
Yeah, good luck.
But they're trying to get that much more driven into it, where, you know, if you have to declare that your physique wasn't built purely off that product.
Yeah. All right, another Patreon one from David. He says, just coming off my first cycle in around 15 years. I've been on Anavar and test cycle with MAST in the final stretch for over 3 months. I gained about 15 pounds. I'm happy with that. I've generally been on a calorie maintenance, but I've had 2 weeks of holiday vacation for you Yanks. You understood that language, Dave. I understand. Where the diet was what it was, I expected a few extra in there. The training has been good, intense, and consistent, even though the holidays and the muscle and strength gains are noticeable. My question is, as I come off cycle, if I keep the diet the same, how much weight can I expect to lose in the first month after? And what's the best way to adjust the diet to try to retain the muscle I've accumulated while still burning fat? I do want to lose some of the weight that I've put on, but I want it to be as efficient as possible. Thanks, guys.
Me personally, what built it will keep it. So I wouldn't change the diet at all or the training. I know there's some excess from the holiday, but I would get back to the pre-holiday diet and I would hold that for a good 4 weeks. Then I could potentially start looking at a calorie reduction or an expenditure increase to start to try and improve condition. But as long as you're training the same way and your diet is the same, there shouldn't be a huge amount of muscle loss. There's going to be some flattening. You know, you're not going to hold as much glycogen and water intracellularly because you're not on gear. It's as simple as that. And there is potentially a slight drop, but I wouldn't expect anything significant, and I think I'd be talking maybe only a couple of kilo. If it was more than that, I would be starting to question the effectiveness of your diet and training and whether the gains were genuine or they were just chemically driven.
Yeah. I did a podcast with Scott Stevenson a little while ago. We titled it Maintaining Your Gains Post-Cycle. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that, like you said, Dave, keeping that food up, you know, after the cycle, your body will want to shed any newly gained muscle. So the mistake I see people make is they're no longer as full and stretching their T-shirts out as they were when they're on cycle, but they definitely are still holding the additional fat they gained. So now they kind of feel like, you know, slumpy and they want to try to start tightening up. But I'm with you, like at least a month after, and that's a month after everything's cleared. Like a month, if he's doing PCT, that's a month after PCT is over. That's when I would then possibly consider to do anything to try to recomp in any way.
Yep. I'm the same.
One of the things that Scott said that I thought was fantastic is he was talking about like satellite cells and building new muscle. He said that like if you envision a city expanding out into suburbs, as that city expands and little suburbs develop, they aren't building new post offices out in the middle of cornfields, assuming that one day there's going to be a city built up around it. That city's going to expand and they're going to keep using the same post offices that they already have. We're talking about like these, like the nuclei and the satellite cells that these. So basically, you know, as that city expands, eventually you'll have to put in new post offices, right? But that's a process, and that's not, they're not going to preemptively already have them there. So you don't have the infrastructure to hold that new muscle the minute that you grow it, and your body will more easily shed it. So it takes time to kind of build that infrastructure, put those post offices in, and make it self-sufficient before you start pulling the calories back.
Yeah, completely agree with it.
What about this one? So we got a bunch of people last week, Dave, tons of people sharing with us their insight on how their estrogen levels were affected from using EQ. Mm-hmm. Here's just one example. 900 test, 900 EQ. On his most recent cycle, E2 levels on ultra sensitive were 13.
That's low.
Yeah. I asked him what he did after that, and he said, I ended up with using 800 EQ, but he didn't get another set of labs done. So, you know, but yeah, just an example there of how EQ is at a 1-to-1 ratio had a real strong effect on that guy.
It seems to be, when it seems to be the strongest of all the anabolics that have an anti-estrogen effect.
Do you feel like because of the difficulty in getting masked in Primo, I feel like we kind of talked about this before, but I think I'm seeing it in practice now. Do you feel like EQ might be the new most popular additional steroid?
I think it's heading that way, but the mass supply route does seem to be slowly recovering, but not great. So I think a lot of it will depend on how long people are worried about mass. And I think the only negative in that, in the sense that might put people off being fully committed to EQ, is its reputation for blood thickening.
Yeah.
So I think if that wasn't there, I think we'd see EQ already being the drug of choice when it came to this setup. But I think that blood thickening element is just making people that little bit more cautious than they would normally be about that switch over.
Yeah. Do you feel like EQ has that much greater of a propensity for causing blood thickness than other steroids?
It's greater. Is it that much greater? Hard to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because like you've said before, we've talked about that they all do it, right?
Yeah, they all do it. Sorry, I was just saw a message pop up, and it's something. EQ's not kidney toxic. That was the thing that just popped up.
Okay. Yeah. Rise 41. So we hear that. I can only speak out of my experience working with a vast number of people over the last 15 years that have used a small shipping container of EQ. That I haven't seen EQ being kidney, but that's something that's been floating around the internet for the past couple of years. Like, oh, you got to stay away from EQ because it's real kidney toxic. And if that were the case, I feel like we would see people experiencing a lot of problems from it, you know?
The only drug that I'm aware of that has a direct impact on the kidneys is Clen.
Anavar, I guess, showed in rat studies.
Yeah, but I've not seen it carried out in humans. Not from a point of actual kidney problems. You see adulteration of markers, but not actual kidney problems. Where there are AKIs that are tied directly to, there are case studies of AKIs directly tied to Clen use. Now, EQ has shown issues around liver. EQ has shown to have an impact on the liver. But I've never seen anything to document it that shows any impact on the kidneys. Granted, it's not the most studied subject as well.
There's that.
So there is that element to it. But I'm not seeing a lot anecdotally either. Yes, kidney issues from unmanaged thick blood, but that isn't the drug itself.
And high blood pressure, all that.
Yeah.
We had, on that note, I can't remember where it is, but somebody asked us, they said, hey, one of the big things I'm concerned about with EQ is anxiety. He said, I understand it's related to GABA. Could I use supplemental GABA to make a difference? I don't know if that would make a difference because from my understanding, GABA does not pass the blood-brain barrier, oral GABA supplementation.
Right. Now, I've got a question.
David, question.
Yeah.
In the back.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers, sir. I've more of recent years seen more people suggesting or experiencing, no, suggestions are the wrong words, I apologize, experiencing issues with compounds that previously people hadn't reported. So severe mental health impacts from things like DECA, EQ being another one. And I'm just like, is it the compound, or, I mean, I know there is some, or is it more just the total anabolic value that's the issue? Or is it a combination? You go back to the 80s and 90s, and very few people have reported mental health issues around DECA. Now, the science is there to show that DECA should cause it, so I'm complete agreement that DECA can cause it. I don't know if it's because there's just more users now, so we have a more broad spectrum comeback of what people are experiencing. I mean, it's like EQ, it's not a drug that on paper I see having any real major impacts around mental health, but all anabolics have an impact on mental health. So it's not like, and I'm just wondering sometimes, is it the compound or is it just the total anabolics that are going in?
Yeah, I wonder too, the whole thing with GABA, because it does change your it does change like neurotransmitter stuff related to GABA in the brain. I wonder if, and we've known about that for a long time, but I think estrogen plays a real major role in mood stuff, being like either high estrogen or low estrogen in that ratio to androgens, you know? So I wonder too if there's an element of that, like if somebody gets anxiety from EQ, because we've seen it, you know, I know what you mean. Like, it seems like more people are reporting it now, but we've always, like, even back in the message board days, there was like the random guy that was like, oh, I can't use it. I get bad anxiety.
But I say it just seems to be more broad spectrum now, and I'm just like, is it the compound, or is it more of a total exposure thing, or is it just because there's more people using, so we've got a broader spectrum of responses? I don't know.
Yeah, that could be it too. And here's the thing, man. For me personally, I was hesitant with EQ because I tend to get anxiety with stuff. Like if I were to take like ECA, I feel like a little stimmed out, and I feel like just more like my body feels more physically anxious, you know? So I assumed like I'm probably somebody that if something causes anxiety, I'm going to get it, but I never got it, man. All right, let's see what else we have here. Scott, love the pod. And I love the way that you present yourself. I like this guy. He says, question, I ran SLU PP332. During my cut, didn't really notice much. Still have a bit remaining and was thinking of trying it during my current growth phase. What's your opinion on that? Really want to prove myself that SLU works and how my body reacts before prep, before completely giving up on it. Thanks. I asked him how much he was using. He said he was using 250 micrograms 3 times a day. And I'll tell you what, I think that's a plenty to see what you're going to get from it. Now that I've had a lot of experience with it in this year, and I've talked to a ton of people who have had their own experiences, be it clients, listeners. Okay, I've got a thought, Dave. I'm going to share. I understand you got.
I'm waiting. I'm very patient.
Oh, okay.
Wait.
Thank you. My thought is this, that I wonder if not everybody is going to get the great benefit from it. I don't know why. I have some theories, but from what I've seen is I've had people that respond in some cases as great as me. Like I would call myself like the best possible outcome to get from SLU. And then I've had people say, yeah, I noticed great, mental clarity from it and improved endurance. And then I've had people say, yeah, I think I've noticed some additional endurance. And then I've had like a small handful of people say I didn't get anything from it at all. I wonder if it has to do like with, in my situation, poor mitochondrial function to begin with, having gotten the bug several years back. Is it correcting that just to get me up and running to feel normal again? Because that's pretty much the way I feel using it. Versus somebody else who didn't have those same level of issues, maybe that has something to do with it. That would be my main thought on it. But yeah, I don't see it working the same across the board for everyone. And I've seen very few random people that they just don't get anything from it. So, I guess that's any drug, right? What was your thought, Dave?
It's not. This has reminded me of something, and I wanted to ask your opinion on it, but it's going to take us off topic. So okay. I'm happy to hold it if you don't want to.
Well, we're between questions. Let's run it.
Right. So there's a whole host of new mitochondrial support drugs, MOT, SLUP, and obviously NAD's been around a while, but it's growing in popularity and seems to be making a bit of a resurgence recently.
Yeah.
And there's a few others as well in the peptide range. I've heard it proposed that because of all these new peptides, that it would be possible to run 1 gram to 2 gram year round and offset with a very comprehensive program of these sort of peptides. I genuinely do not know how effective these peptides are at offsetting the negative impact from anabolics. Yeah. So you've done a bit more on it than me. So I was curious as to your thought on that idea.
Okay, it's an interesting direction that they're taking that. And I guess that naturally I can see how people would, want to say if okay, people, how can I take more,
Yeah, it's something we talk about in harm reduction all the time, is that harm reduction wants people to stop using steroids. Steroid users want to use more and more effectively, and it's those two polar opposite approaches that often causes the friction between effective service.
Here's my take on it, though, would be this. I've seen it this way. I've seen it being that if you can get your body tuned up and in the best possible place, and I would say this, not just the mitochondrial stuff, but also let's look at the GLPs, where we can like greatly, radically improve your insulin sensitivity quickly. Because example being that if somebody's in an off season and I need to get them into a dieted state, we're going to have a period of time where their body isn't as responsive, that, where we're maybe pulling food back. Their body isn't just like clicking yet if they've been in a long off season. So there's almost like a pre-diet phase that they need to go through after a big push upward before they're ready to actually be in a good fat loss position. I think that you can use GLPs to fast track that. So if you can fast track somebody's ability to get like super sensitive, super responsive to dieting, and you can not only increase the function of your mitochondria, but increase the number of your mitochondria, you're putting yourself into a position where you can get more out of less. Maybe we need less to get the same job done is the way that I've looked at it.
Yeah, but you've not answered my question is,
I don't know. I don't know.
Do you feel that those peptides and that new family of peptides have the potential to offset high dose or long-term exposure to anabolic use?
I doubt it, man.
Okay.
I mean, I think that you could get some benefit, but like honestly, man, you know what it's like, Dave. Like,
yeah, no, I generally didn't know. I don't know enough about them. You've looked at them in a lot more depth than me, and you've got some personal experience. I don't have the personal experience, and I've not really looked at them in any depth yet. So I honestly didn't know. So I thought, well, I'll ask Scott. He's probably got a better idea on the actual peptide side of things.
Yeah, I think if anything, you can get away with using less. Like maybe we don't need to add Clen in as soon. Maybe we don't even need T3, or we don't need it as soon. We start the cycle, and for say a contest prep, maybe we don't feel the need to push the doses as high. Like you get the results you're going for, and I use that's the way I see it as a coach. We use the doses that are required to get the results we're going for within safety. Or harm reduction, I guess, risk reduction, right? And then I'm just finding though we're getting further along with less than we needed before.
Okay. So your standpoint is basically the opposite.
Well, yeah, kind of.
With the introduction of those peptides, you should get away with a lesser dose.
Absolutely.
And not actually need to use more. Okay.
Yeah, that would totally be my take. I think that it could be a really good benefit to our community overall, get our, and basically we're talking about like just getting somebody tuned up, getting their health into the best place they can be.
I do think that it's going to go the other way though, unfortunately.
It's unfortunate, man. I could see you being right though, All right. Don't know if let's see, what does he say here? Oh, just a comment. So this guy says that he'll buy, I batch test everything I order now. So here we're talking about like testing your mass, testing your Primo. So here's what he's going to do. He'll buy 3 different batches of Primo from the same vendor, I think. And then he'll mix them together and send that off to Janoschik. I mean, if it's off...
Well, let's say it's all Primo.
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
And then you had 1 that was dosed correctly and 2 that were dosed incorrectly. Then those 2 are going to pull that one down. So when you send your mixed batch, you're going to get a reading that's slightly under, but not reflective of the individuals. I don't understand the logic there. Maybe it's me that's misunderstanding the situation. I would thought if you take 3 separate samples of a drug,
Yeah.
and combine them and then get them tested, you're not getting any indication of which samples are good and which samples are bad. You're getting a whole, a blend.
But if it all tests out at, like say it's supposed to be 100, and it all tests, and you mix 3 together and it comes back at 100, then you're certain that
it's
all
good.
3
but
are
if
good.
if it comes back at 75, you might have one at 50 and one at 100, and it's like, well, I don't know which is which now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a point too. I guess he's just trying to save money, right?
No, I get it. Fucking, it's expensive. I do get it. I do get it. It would be such a nice world if we could trust these supplies. Following on from that question I asked you, Rise has said something. It's like, I disagree because there are factors.
Disagree with what?
That he was saying it would make you more tolerant and resilient to some abuse. Yeah, but they don't cover every aspect of what abuse problems cause.
True.
So we've got mental health issues, we've got cardiac pressure. Now, a couple of the peptides do support cardiac to a degree, but I don't see it as being a blanket repair from the little bit that I do know. But I was asking Scott because he knows more about it than me.
Another guy with his EQ information. He says he was using 525 test, 350 EQ. He said estrogen was 34 tested after 6 weeks. So that's like a 3-2.
Mm-hmm.
3 parts test to 2 parts EQ, and he's a little bit higher. The last guy was 1-1. This is like a 3-2.
Yeah, I would have said that's probably closer to where you need to be.
I like that. Yeah, I like that 3-2 then for him at least. After 22 weeks at 10 milligrams of Anavar, you were saying, we were wondering how long could you run VAR for, at a low dose. After 22 weeks at 10 milligrams of VAR and 175 tests each week, HDL was 34, and hematocrit, MCV, hemoglobin were slightly in the red. Test was 1,500, free test 400, and T4 was low, but T3 uptake was high. I mean, I consider that to be not bad.
What was LDL? Did he say?
He didn't say.
Yeah, because Anavar increases LDL. Going back to Rise, the problem with Jason is he's got a vested interest in drugs. No disrespect to the guy in the slightest, he's a clever man and everything, but I wouldn't say that was a true harm reduction angle, because there's a desire.
I could see it helping. Yeah. I could see it helping, but I would definitely... I don't know, and I know Jason personally. I don't think he would subscribe to the idea of you can now blast your gear higher. You know what I mean? I don't think he's saying that at all.
No, I don't think he's. I think the issue is, though, that anyone that's within the industry, there's this risk of a slightly cognitive bias towards usage, in the same way that from the medical community, which I spent all day Friday with, they have a bias towards non-usage.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I have affiliates that, have these things that we don't talk about here on YouTube. But so you could say I do too. At the same time, it's not my foundational business. So if I didn't believe in it, I just wouldn't stand behind it.
No, I think the problem is it's the background that you're coming from a little bit. You know what I mean? So it's
I get what you mean.
I was with the endocrinologist on Friday, and there were some very valid points raised, but there were also some unrealistic or slightly biased points raised, and it's like, and they're not anti-usage in the slightest, but they have a slight bias because their information and everything comes from a medical side of things, whereas our information always comes from a usage side of things, even though we do research and look at things. So there's always going to be that slight edge one way or the other, depending on where your background is.
Yeah. Yeah. So take everybody with that grain of salt, I guess.
Well,
right?
yeah, it's just, I would use anyone, even Clever Scott, who's probably the man I trust the most on the planet when it comes to anabolics. I would still use that as a starting point to just go and do some of your own finding on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Let me see if I can find one more here. All right, we'll take this last one. He has 2 questions. He said Andrew mentioned using metformin, like they're taking insulin. How does metformin work? I don't know if Andrew said to do that.
Who's Andrew?
I don't think he would. Andrew Barry that I podcast with. I don't think he would have said to. It's not. Metformin is going to dispose of your glucose, right? Versus insulin is going to shuttle that glucose to storage and hopefully the muscle.
Many people combine metformin and insulin because of the increased sensitivity from metformin. But whether that's, I wouldn't say that's necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like metformin used to be a lot more popular than it is now, you know?
Yeah, I do think it's waning a bit, to be honest.
And then he also said, I believe it's been mentioned that EQ takes 6 weeks to peak in the blood. If you up the dose after 6 weeks, will it take just as long for the change to happen?
Depends on the dose increase.
Oh, well, yeah.
You know, I mean, if you're going from nothing to 600 milligrams of EQ a week, I mean, most drugs peak about 5-6 weeks. It's not just EQ. If you're going from 0 to 600 milligram, but if you're going from 600 to 800, then that's not going to take another 6 weeks for that increase to peak.
All right. Dave, do you have any wisdom for us today?
Nice weather.
Hope you're feeling better this week, Dave. That's what Gabe said.
I am, thank you. A little bit snotty, which I always am a little bit snotty. I get that. My sinuses aren't the best. But, yeah, in general, I am feeling much better, thank you. And generally feeling like I can cope with life again. Whereas last week I felt like I was dying. Sorry, unaliving very slowly. Which I am, actually, I suppose, technically speaking. Advice. Dave's wisdom or advice.
Oh, Blunt Force Tanya had a great comment. I like this one a lot when we were talking about somebody had asked about taking GABA, while on EQ. She said, from my understanding, it's better to support GABA production through B5, B6, 5-HTP, etc. I like that. Smart gal.
It just as well. Do you remember all the sleep products that had GABA in?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it will help to relax, like, the skeletal muscle. You know? And if you can physically get that sense of relaxation, I do think that does help with restfulness.
You know what? I don't really have anything. I was trying to think if I had something, and I don't really have anything.
It's okay. It puts you on the spot.
I feel I'm going to be very in danger of repeating myself.
You made it into.
I'm not going to say it before you say it.
You made this into a big thing. You know, I watch Grand Thumb. If you guys know who Grand Thumb is on YouTube, he's another YouTuber. He's actually a real big YouTuber, and they have their dad advice at the end of the show, and it's like this long. They'll be like, Dave, what do you have for dad advice? And it'll be like, make sure you spend time with your kids. Boom, mic drop. That's it. Versus for you put a lot of pressure on yourself. You made it into like this big novel, this segment, and now.
I couldn't say that, though. I couldn't say spend time with your kids because I can't fucking stand mine. I'm trying to get rid of the last one desperately, but it's not working.
Is she still working for you?
No, none of my kids work for me.
No? All right.
Sacked them all. Jeez. No, the youngest is like, I'm trying to get her out of the house. Get a fucking full-time job and move out, but it isn't happening. No, I haven't. I'm sorry, guys. I haven't really got anything. No, really haven't. I mean,
it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to have anything, Dave. We like you just for who you are. You know that? And people were worried about you last week. They were like, oh, Dave looks a little peaked this week. He doesn't look well.
You know what?
Taking care of himself.
I have noticed that the bags under my eyes that become very relevant or very visual, should I say, when I do this podcast are looking particularly bad, aren't they? God, I'm looking old.
We're getting there. We're getting there. I'll let you know how my calcium score test goes. I'm going to get that tomorrow. I think they're trying to dupe me, by the way. They're like, you can't drink caffeine for 48 hours. And then I look everywhere online, says 4 hours.
Yeah, the other thing with the calcium score, the test has to be done fairly quickly. That sample deteriorates like a bitch.
Well, they're doing it's an MRI. It's a picture, the test I'm doing.
Oh, right. I thought you just meant a blood test. Sorry.
No, I'm laying in a tube.
You're laying in a tube?
Yep, I'm gonna hang out there. That's what I'm doing tomorrow.
Do you get the headphones over there and you can pick your own music?
Oh, I don't even know about that.
They used to do it. They don't do it anymore. But yeah, you get headphones, and you used to be able to bring a CD in. I mean, obviously we don't have CDs anymore much, but we used to be able to bring a CD in and shove it in the machine, and then you'd be able to listen.
Maybe you could plug my phone in, and I could listen to Dave educate us.
You could listen to me reading lullabies.
Oh, Dave, thanks for sharing the show yesterday, by the way, on social media with your big. Dave's got a great social media following, guys, over on Instagram. He does an incredible job. I now granted, yeah, I do spend hours putting the show together for us and everything. And I spend all that time making that picture every week and all that. Dave has that one little job, of just sharing the show with a link in his stories on Instagram. But it's such an important job. I wanted to take a minute here we can all thank him for doing that.
You know what? Zach ran me this morning kicking off as well because he asked me to share his new ebook.
He's got a new ebook, huh?
Yeah, a training one. He's doing quite a few, actually.
Okay.
And I did share it about 3 days later. But I didn't tag him in it. So he rang me up this morning giving me abuse for not tagging him. It's like, I can't win here.
Well, this is your own thing. This is our thing, I know. I go online and I see Dave, right? I see him and he's all like, oh, do you want 5 tips on how to, prepare your food?
Nothing to do with me. That's my social lady.
What are you talking about? Hold on a second here. I got something for you here.
No, so my social lady will send me a list of I want videos on this, and this.
I shared the show yesterday. I tagged Dave. I also put a link in there. Dave didn't do that. So, okay, here's Dave right here. What's this?
You know what?
What's this?
When you do something wrong and your missus reminds you of it for fucking years.
No, you have nothing to do with this, do you? That's not you, is it?
Right. All right.
That's not you.
Look, let me explain.
Who does that sound like? Listeners? Audio listeners?
So, how do we jazz these things up?
Who does that sound like to you?
I get a list. I get a WhatsApp message from Tony, and she says, I want a video on this, and this. And then I go and sit in front of the PC, and I do all these videos, then I send them her. And then the videos might come out 3 months later, 4 months later, depending on what she's scheduling. So, yes, I am effing useless with it. I know.
Hey, by the way, too, one last thing. There was that gear place on Instagram that was impersonating you and using our videos, right? I reported them.
So did I.
As being, and they ask you, like, what are you reporting this as? And I said, as impersonating somebody. And then the next thing is like, who? And then I put in you, and then it said, nope. We found that this profile is doing nothing wrong. So then I do it again, right? I'm like, oh, okay, because it's linked to a fake gear site, like a scam gear site. So I do it again. I'm saying, and I certified, rat them out, illegal goods that they're trying to sell. And I got a message back again a couple days later. No, we investigated this profile. They aren't doing anything wrong.
And yeah, I put an advert for the PEDS course up and I get blocked from live for a whole year.
It's the first thing I thought of, dude. It's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah, it's like the guy impersonating me can get away with it, but the actual real person gets done for it. It's like, I give up.
Guys, we appreciate you tuning in. Dave, are you taking new clients right now?
Always.
Okay. How do they reach out to you? Social media? Is that the best place?
Yeah, usually, to be honest, just on one of the social media platform messaging.
All right. We've got Dave linked below in the description. So go there, guys. You can reach out to Dave. Hit me up, mcnallydiets@gmail.com. And, of course, go to Strom Sports Nutrition, the UK and the US. Get some good health supplements. Get your Thrombomax. Keep your hematocrits and your hemoglobins in range. Go to truenutrition.com. Use our code THINK for 10% off over there. Supplementsource.ca for Canadians. Thank you to everybody from Patreon. We got through your Patreon questions today and for another episode of the podcast. We'll see you soon. Thanks, Dave. I mentioned it last week in the live stream, but if Dave is a bit over the Uncle Dave's advice, could you go back to when Dave teaches Scott proper English? Do you remember that?
I do, yeah.
We had like a British word of the day type thing. Dave, yeah, it was like Dave teaches Scott English.
The word of the day is cockwomble.
Oh, you did that one before.
Have I?
Actually.
Oh, bollocks.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, spunk bucket then.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you did that one before, but I've heard you say it at least, something along those lines. It's a good one. I just hired Ginger Training Josh Gold as my coach.
Never mind, you'll get over it.
All right, I'll bring us in.
He stinks of piss, mate. He's ginger.
Aren't you kind of ginger too?
No, I'm red.
What's the difference?
Right. So, couple of things. Gingers stink of piss, cheat at cards, and they're soul-stealing, scared of sunlight motherfuckers. I don't mind the sunlight. I'm red. Have you ever heard of Eric the Ginger Viking? No.
I think so.
No, you've heard of Eric the Red.
Oh, is that what I've heard of? Okay.
If you see a good-looking woman who's got auburn hair, you say she's a good-looking redhead.
Yeah,
you
would.
do not say she's a good-looking ginger, do you? No. You see, reds are all the positives of the genetic trait, and gingers are all the shit. And Josh is ginger, so therefore he stinks of piss, cheats at cards.
Isn't there something about genetic differences with people who have red hair for either like tolerance for pain or tolerance for medications? Isn't there some truth to that?
There's some, yeah. I don't know. Now, my pain tolerance is weird. It depends what it is.
Yeah.
So, physio can go as hard as they want into my back, my hamstrings, my calves, my glutes. No problem. Touch my chest or my core, and I cry like a 5-year-old.
Let's see. Do redheads handle medications differently? Redheads, comprising of 1 to 2% of the global population, often carry unique genetic traits influencing their response to medication. These genetic variations impact factors like drug metabolism, pain sensitivity, and anesthesia reactions, making redheads a compelling focus for pharmacogenomics research.
That's one I've never heard of before. Pharmacogenomics. That's a good one. I like that word.
Pharmacogenomics. All right, I'll bring us in.